Alright, up next, grammar mistakes. A lot of you have some simple grammar mistakes. My first link there goes to a Word doc based on Colin's writing, and it has every grammatical rule that you would need in here. So let me just highlight a few. Alright, so fragments, most of you don't have fragments, but if you do, it's because you either lack a verb by accident or your idea is just not fully formed. You don't have a complete thought. More often, what you all have is a comma splice. That's when you have two complete sentences joined with a comma alone. So that's a type of run-on. A run-on is when you have two or more complete thoughts together, inappropriately together. So comma splice is one kind. So how you can fix it, you can separate your sentences into two separate sentences with a period. You can have a comma but then add a conjunction, such as for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. You can add a word that makes one part of it a dependent clause. For example, the word although or the word because, make one part of that a dependent clause. You could also use a semicolon. So a semicolon looks like that. And you can use a semicolon when what you have before it is a complete sentence and what you have after it is also a complete sentence. They have to be closely related enough that you would want to put them together into one long sentence. But grammatically, you can use it whenever you have two complete thoughts on either side, one complete thought on either side. Versus a colon, you need a complete thought on one side, but the other side, either or, front or back, can be incomplete. It could be just a list, a single word, a dependent clause, a fragment, something like that. Alright, next, sentence structure. Most of you are pretty good with this. Issues that I have seen is either you want to write with all short sentences, which makes it sound very juvenile, or you want to write with all long sentences, which is also a little bit hard to read and makes it look like maybe you're trying too hard, whereas if you vary long sentences with some short ones in there, it packs a stronger punch, the short ones, and brings your point maybe home better. Alright, an issue I have seen in a lot of your writing is active voice, the lack of active voice, aka passive voice. So basically, the subject of your sentence should be the one doing the action. The subject of your sentence should not be acted upon. And you can tell that something is passive because it will always have a to be verb, is, are, was, were, be, being, been. And then typically you would also have the word by and then whoever is actually doing the action. The ball was kicked by the soccer player instead of the soccer player kicked the ball. So when you're fixing those sentences, you are not changing the content of the sentence, merely the order of the words, and that changes the subject to be the person or thing doing the action. So whenever you see passive voice, that's what I'm talking about. Alright, parallel structure I have not seen a lot of issues with, but in terms of making your writing stronger, if you want to purposefully add some phrases that have great parallel structure, it makes your writing flow more, it makes it stronger, makes it more fun for your reader to listen to read. So for example, parallel structure is whenever you have two or more phrases, two or more words, two or more clauses, you want to phrase those items in as similar a way as possible. So maybe past tense verbs, studied and made. Maybe you want to add ed words, clapped, stomped, and yelled. If you're doing phrases, you would kind of match the whole phrase together. But basically you need a list to make things parallel. Dangling or misplaced modifiers I haven't really seen, so I'm going to skip that one. Capitalization you've been pretty good with, although some of you will capitalize strange things such as theme statements, which you don't need to capitalize. Published works you're good with except for when you're lazy. Organizations, we haven't really had an issue with that. Course titles. Alright, so next up is commas. You're good with them in a series. You are pretty good with them with two complete thoughts, and then remember you need a contract or a conjunction with it. Sorry, fanboys. Otherwise, it's a comma splice without it. If you have two or more adjectives. Alright, so here I've seen a lot of issues with a lack of comma after an introductory element or a dependent phrase at the beginning of your sentence. So for example, feeling exhausted and discouraged, comma, he gave up the search. So the main sentence here is he gave up the search. That's the subject and the verb. But this phrase is giving more information about it. It does not stand on its own, therefore you offset it by a comma. Or for example, comma, did you know, etc. After the movie was over, comma, we grabbed a bite to eat. So you separate where the fragment clause here, prepositional phrase, ends and the complete thought begins. Some of you have had issues with sentence interrupters called appositives. When you give more information about something in the middle of the sentence, it sort of restates something. For example, Harper Lee, comma, author of To Kill a Mockingbird, comma. You offset that by commas because you could take that phrase out and it would still leave a complete thought. Okay. Then quotation marks, I think you're pretty good with. Titles of short works. Direct quotes, obviously, and you offset those by additional punctuation like a comma or a colon. So when you're using quotation marks, your punctuation goes inside. So question mark quote, period quote. Unless like you are asking a question that someone needs to answer about the work, or something else is going on. Okay. Apostrophes you've been pretty good with. I think you know those. Specialty punctuation, I've already talked to you about colons and semicolons. In another video I talked about ellipses. That's when you want to omit a section of a quote or a phrase. Hyphens you've been okay with. Dashes I think you're okay with. Subject-verb agreement I have seen some issues with, and I think what would help that is honestly if you would read your writing out loud when you're done, you would figure out that it's an issue. What most people do is you have a plural subject but then you use like the word is. Like all of these stories is, interesting or something. So just check that the verb that you are using, the tense matches the subject. Pronoun antecedent agreement you've been pretty good with. Misused homophones I've seen a lot of issues with, especially there, and there. Hopefully you know them by now. If you use the wrong word, you look very ignorant. And even if you do know the difference, if you use it, you still look ignorant. And maybe it's just that you're lazy or you don't care. But either way, it does not look good for you. And then I have other misused words. Okay, so those are the main areas of grammar that you should improve upon. I also have a website here about how to fix these common mistakes, which I just talked to you about. But it talks about other examples. So subject-verb agreement, the group was how to fix passive voice, the old woman climbed the stairs, how to fix dangling modifiers, and run-on sentences. So you need to really reread your writing when you're done with it. It's not that I need you to be perfect the first time through, but before you submit a final copy, before you have someone peer edit or proofread, you need to do it yourself. It's your writing, and it's going to be imperfect because we think imperfectly, therefore we write imperfectly. But it can be a little bit more perfect when you work hard to proofread.